I'll make you walk again, the mechanic whispered to the millionaire in the wheelchair. She laughed cruelly at his face, but when he knelt down and touched her legs, her smile froze forever. The wheelchair slammed against Ryan Mitchell's boots before he even saw her face. "Move," the woman said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You're blocking my car." Ryan stepped back, hands still covered in oil from the engine he'd been working on, and watched as the most expensive vehicle he'd ever seen rolled into Cooper's auto repair like an invasion. The Mercedes-Benz S-Class gleamed under Detroit's gray afternoon sky, so out of place in this neighborhood that it might as well have been a spaceship. But it wasn't the car that made every mechanic in the shop stop working. It was her. She sat in that wheelchair like it was a throne, dressed in a business suit that cost more than Ryan's monthly rent, her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Everything about her screamed money and power, except for her legs, which sat motionless beneath an expensive skirt, useless as broken machinery. Eleanor Blackwell had arrived, and she was about to destroy Ryan's entire day. "Well?" Eleanor snapped, rolling herself forward with aggressive precision. "Are you deaf or just slow? I said my car needs fixing." Ryan wiped his hands on his work rag, forcing his voice to stay level. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Ryan Mitchell, owner of—" "I don't care who you are," Eleanor interrupted, her eyes scanning the shop with obvious disgust. "I care that this is apparently the only repair shop open for 20 miles and my car is making a noise that shouldn't exist in a vehicle this expensive." Across the shop, Tommy, Ryan's longtime employee, took a step forward, his jaw clenched. Ryan caught his eye and shook his head slightly. "Not worth it." "What kind of noise?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone professional. "The kind that tells me something is wrong," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I wouldn't expect someone in a place like this to understand, but my regular mechanic, a competent professional, would diagnose it in seconds." Ryan felt the familiar burn of being judged. It happened often enough in his line of work. People looked at his grease-stained hands and made assumptions about his intelligence, his worth, his entire existence. But something about this woman's casual cruelty hit differently. "Keys?" Ryan asked simply. Eleanor pulled the key fob from her designer purse and tossed it toward him. Not handed, tossed, like throwing food to a dog. The expensive metal tumbled through the air, and Ryan caught it reflexively. "Try not to break anything," Eleanor said. "I'm sure you're used to working on cars held together with duct tape, but this vehicle actually has value." Behind Ryan, he heard Pete, the oldest mechanic in the shop, a man with 40 years of experience, mutter something under his breath that definitely violated YouTube's content policy. Ryan popped the hood. The engine was pristine, perfectly maintained, exactly what you'd expect from someone who could afford a car like this. The high-pitched whine Eleanor mentioned was obvious immediately, serpentine belt starting to fail. 20 minutes of work, maybe 30 if he took his time. But then Ryan saw something else, something that made his blood turn cold. He crouched down by the rear wheel, his trained eye catching what most people would miss. The brake line, the crucial component that stood between controlled stopping and catastrophic failure, was corroded through in two places. Thin spots where the metal had degraded so badly it was practically transparent. One hard stop, one emergency brake, and the line would snap completely. At highway speeds, in a car this heavy, with a driver who couldn't use her legs to brace for impact, the result would be devastating. Ryan stood slowly, his heart pounding. He looked at this woman who'd rolled into his shop radiating contempt, who'd treated him and his team like they were beneath her notice, who'd made it crystal clear that she considered them all nothing more than necessary servants. And he was about to save her life. "Ma'am," Ryan said carefully, walking back to where Eleanor sat, scrolling through her phone with bored impatience. "You've got a serpentine belt issue, that's the noise. But there's something more serious we need to discuss." "I don't pay for problems I didn't ask about," Eleanor said without looking up from her screen. "Fix the belt. Send me the bill. I have actual important things to do today." "Your brake lines are corroded through," Ryan continued, his voice firm. "Both rear lines are about to fail. If they go while you're driving—" Eleanor's head snapped up, her eyes blazing. "Let me guess. You're about to tell me I need some expensive repair that coincidentally you can provide. How convenient." "Ma'am, this isn't—" "Save the sales pitch," Eleanor cut him off, her voice rising. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think because I'm sitting in this wheelchair that I don't recognize a scam when I hear one? The shop had gone silent. Even the classic rock radio seemed to have stopped between songs. This isn't a scam, Ryan said, working to keep his voice steady. This is a safety issue. Your brake lines are perfectly fine, Eleanor finished. My regular mechanic does comprehensive inspections every service. He would have caught any real problem. But you see a woman in a wheelchair, a woman in an expensive car, and you think easy target. Well, you picked the wrong person to try this on. Ryan felt something snap inside his chest. Not anger exactly. Something deeper than that. A bone-deep exhaustion with being dismissed, being assumed dishonest, being treated as less than human because his hands were dirty and his shop wasn't in a wealthy zip code. Tommy, Ryan called out, not taking his eyes off Eleanor. Bring me my phone. Tommy handed over the device, confusion clear on his face. Ryan switched the phone to camera mode and walked back to the rear wheel. Come here, he said to Eleanor. Excuse me? Her eyebrows shot up. I said come here, Ryan repeated, his voice carrying an edge now. You want to see what a scam looks like? I'll show you exactly what's under your car. Then, you can decide if I'm lying. For a moment, Eleanor looked like she was going to refuse. Then something shifted in her expression. Pride, maybe, or the desire to prove him wrong, and she rolled her wheelchair forward. Ryan crouched down again, holding his phone so the camera captured the corroded brake lines in sharp detail. See that? He zoomed in on where the metal was eaten through, held together by nothing but rust and crystallized brake fluid. That's your rear brake line, and that, he shifted the angle, is where it's about to snap completely. Eleanor leaned down from her wheelchair, squinting at the phone screen. Even she couldn't deny what was directly in front of her eyes. The evidence was irrefutable. Her face went pale. That's impossible, she whispered. My mechanic, he inspected everything 6 months ago. He would have... 6 months is a long time, Ryan said, standing up, especially if the car's been sitting. Moisture accelerates corrosion. This didn't happen overnight, but it happened. Eleanor stared at the phone screen for a long moment, her hands gripping her wheelchair's armrests so tightly her knuckles turned white. Ryan watched emotions flash across her face. Disbelief, fear, and something else. Something that looked like the beginning of shame. Then her mask slammed back into place. Fine, she said curtly. Fix it. Both problems. How much and how long? Ryan calculated quickly. Serpentine belt is $60 in parts, 1 hour labor. Brake lines are more complex. I need to replace both rear lines completely, flush the system, test everything thoroughly. Total cost around $800. Time, minimum 3 hours, possibly 4. 4 hours? Eleanor's voice rose sharply. That's unacceptable. I have a meeting downtown in 90 minutes. Just do the belt. No, Ryan said simply. The single word hung in the air like a challenge. Eleanor's head turned slowly toward him, her eyes narrowing. What did you just say to me? I said no, Ryan repeated, his voice steady and clear. I'm not letting you drive out of here in a death trap. Those brake lines could fail any time. On the highway, in traffic, anywhere. I won't be responsible for that. You don't get to tell me what to do, Eleanor said, her voice dropping to something dangerous. This is my car. I'm the customer. You work for me. Wrong, Ryan said, feeling a strange calm settle over him. I work for myself. This is my shop. And in my shop, I don't send people out to die in unsafe vehicles. Not for any amount of money. Eleanor's face flushed with anger. You can't force me to get the work done. Give me my keys. Sure, Ryan said. Right after you sign a liability waiver stating that I informed you of the dangerous condition of your vehicle and you chose to decline the repair against my professional recommendation. And after I call the police to report an unsafe vehicle about to enter public roads. He pulled out his phone again, thumb hovering over the screen. You wouldn't dare, Eleanor breathed. Ryan started dialing. Not the police, not yet, but she didn't know that. Wait! Eleanor's voice cracked across the shop like a whip. Then quieter, with visible effort. Wait, just wait! Ryan lowered the phone. Eleanor took a shaking breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was different. Still angry, but underneath the anger was something raw and painful. Why do you care? She asked. You don't know me. I've been nothing but cruel to you since I arrived. I've insulted you, insulted your shop, treated you like you're beneath me. So why do you care if I drive away and something happens?" The question was genuine, and it deserved a genuine answer. Ryan thought about his daughter Sophie, about the kind of man he wanted her to see when she looked at her father. He thought about his own father, who taught him that a mechanic's job wasn't just fixing machines. It was protecting the people who trusted you with their lives. "Because it's the right thing to do," Ryan said simply. "And because nobody deserves to die because of failed brakes, no matter how they treat other people. Even people who treat me like garbage." Something cracked in Eleanor's expression. Just for a heartbeat, Ryan saw past all the anger and defensiveness to the agony underneath. Raw, bleeding pain that had nothing to do with her paralyzed legs, and everything to do with her broken soul. Then the moment passed, and her cold mask returned. "3 hours?" she asked. "Minimum," Ryan confirmed. Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Fine, I'll cancel the meeting. But I'm watching every single thing you do. If you try to add any unnecessary work, if you try to cheat me in any way—" "You'll what?" Ryan asked, not unkindly. "You'll leave a bad review? You've already made it clear what you think of me in this place. I'm not doing this for your approval, ma'am. I'm doing it because it's my job to keep you safe." Tommy brought over a folding chair, a regular chair, since Eleanor already had her wheelchair, and set it up where she could watch the work area. Eleanor positioned herself like a general surveying a battlefield, her eyes tracking Ryan's every movement. Ryan got to work, hyper-aware of her scrutiny. He explained each step as he went, partly out of professional courtesy, and partly because he sensed that Eleanor was someone who needed to understand, to maintain some illusion of control. "The serpentine belt drives all your accessories," Ryan said, removing the old belt. "Alternator, power steering, air conditioning. When it fails, everything stops working." "I'm not mechanically ignorant," Eleanor said sharply. "I know what a serpentine belt does." "Didn't say you were," Ryan replied evenly. The work continued in tense silence. Ryan moved to the brake lines, and the complexity of the repair demanded his complete focus. But during the quiet moments, waiting for parts, letting brake fluid drain, Eleanor started talking. Not to him exactly. More like filling the silence with observations, criticisms, commentary about the state of the neighborhood, the decline of American manufacturing, the death of quality workmanship. But Ryan noticed something beneath her words. Knowledge. Real deep knowledge about business, about economics, about the forces that had hollowed out communities like this one. "My father owned a shop like this," Eleanor said suddenly, watching Ryan thread a new brake line with careful precision. 3 of them, actually, before everything changed. It was the first personal thing she'd shared. Ryan glanced up, surprised. "That right?" he asked carefully. "Long time ago," Eleanor said, her voice distant. "Before the world decided that people like my father, people who worked with their hands, who fixed things instead of just throwing them away, weren't valuable anymore." She stopped abruptly, like she'd said too much. Ryan went back to work, but something had shifted. The anger in the shop had diffused slightly, replaced by something more complicated, almost like understanding. An hour into the repair, Eleanor's phone rang. She answered with her business voice, crisp, commanding, nothing like the slightly softer tone she'd been using. "Yes, I'm aware. I can't make it, because my car broke down. That's irrelevant. Reschedule for tomorrow, same time, non-negotiable." She ended the call without saying goodbye, frustration radiating from her rigid posture. "Important meeting?" Ryan asked, not looking up. "A performance review," Eleanor said. Then, unexpectedly, "I run a consulting firm. Corporate restructuring. I tell companies how to cut costs and maximize efficiency." "Sounds challenging," Ryan said diplomatically. Eleanor's laugh was bitter, broken. "It's soul-destroying. I spend my days firing people, dismantling departments, turning human beings into line items on spreadsheets. I make companies profitable by making people miserable, and everyone hates me for it." Ryan paused in his work, really looking at her. "Do you hate yourself for it?" The question was too personal, too direct. But Eleanor didn't snap at him this time. "Every single day," she whispered. Before Ryan could respond, Marcus, the youngest mechanic, called out from the front office. "Ryan, Something fell out of the Mercedes. Marcus walked over holding a medical alert bracelet, its metal gleaming under the shop lights. It must have fallen from Eleanor's purse when she transferred to her wheelchair. Ryan took it, reading the engraved information. Eleanor Blackwell, incomplete spinal cord injury. C6, C7 paralysis below waist. Emergency contact. Emma Blackwell, daughter. The words incomplete injury burned into Ryan's vision. Incomplete, not complete, not permanent, not hopeless. Incomplete meant nerve pathways still existed. Incomplete meant potential for recovery. Incomplete meant that with the right treatment, the right therapy, the right intervention, there might still be a chance. Ryan looked at Marcus, whose eyes were wide with the same realization. Then he looked at Eleanor, who'd gone perfectly still, her face drained of color. "That's private," she said, her voice barely audible. Ryan walked over slowly, the bracelet held carefully in his oil-stained hands. "Ms. Blackwell, have you been doing physical therapy? Give that back." Her voice shook. "Because if your injury is incomplete, there are treatments that could—" "I said give it back!" Eleanor's scream tore through the shop, raw and desperate, and full of 2 years of suppressed agony. "You don't know anything. You're a mechanic. You fix cars, not people. You don't get to stand there with your dirty hands and your simple solutions and tell me about my body, my injury, my life." The pain in her voice was so visceral that everyone in the shop flinched. Ryan crouched down in front of her wheelchair, speaking gently. "How long has it been?" "Since the accident." Eleanor's hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip her armrests. 2 years, she whispered. 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. 783 days of waking up in this chair. 783 days of being half a person. "You're not half a person," Ryan said firmly. "Yes, I am." Eleanor's voice broke completely, and suddenly she was crying. Not delicate tears, but wrenching, body-shaking sobs that seemed to tear themselves from somewhere deep inside her. "I can't walk. I can't feel my legs. I can't do the simplest things without help. My husband left me because he couldn't handle having a crippled wife. My daughter barely speaks to me because I've become a monster. I've lost everything, and you're standing there telling me I'm not broken." The word crippled hung in the air, ugly and self-inflicted. Ryan stayed crouched in front of her, letting her pain spill out. "The doctors said I might walk again," Eleanor continued through her sobs. "They said with intensive therapy, with dedication, I might recover partial function, maybe even full function, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle the hope. Do you understand? Hope is worse than despair because hope can fail. Hope means trying and possibly falling. Hope means believing in something and watching it die." She looked down at her motionless legs. "So I gave up. I chose anger instead of hope. I chose cruelty instead of vulnerability. I spent 2 years pushing away everyone who tried to help me because it was easier than risking failure. And now I'm so far gone that I don't even recognize myself anymore." The confession hung in the air, raw and devastating. Ryan stood slowly and walked to his small office. When he returned, he was holding a photograph, a picture of a young girl with a bright smile standing on her own 2 feet. "This is my daughter, Sophie," Ryan said, showing Eleanor the image. "She's 10 years old. 3 years ago, she was in a car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. Sophie's legs were shattered, broken in 8 places total." Eleanor looked at the photo through tear-blurred eyes. "Doctors said she'd probably never walk normally again," Ryan continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Said she'd need braces, crutches, maybe a wheelchair for life. She was 7 years old, and they were telling me her life was essentially over before it started." He pulled out another photo, this one showing Sophie in a hospital bed, both legs in casts, her face twisted in pain. "There was this physical therapist, Dr. James Chen. He specialized in pediatric trauma rehabilitation. He told me something I'll never forget." Ryan's voice broke slightly. He said, "The body wants to heal. It's designed to heal. But healing requires 2 things, the right intervention and the courage to endure the pain that comes with recovery." Ryan showed Eleanor a 3rd photo, Sophie taking her first steps after surgery, supported by parallel bars, determination blazing in her young eyes. "The therapy was brutal," Ryan said. Sophie cried every single session. She begged me to let her stop.